Hi, this video demonstrates how Phoebe AI can be used to reveal emotion insights with tone of voice analysis. In the UK, Phoebe is provided by Analytical Factory, who are a Tier 1 partner to Phoebe Inc. and who specialise in speech recognition, natural language processing and artificial intelligence in the area of voice data. The raison d'etre of Phoebe is that for most people, the human voice remains the most intuitive and natural and efficient way for us to communicate. Phoebe offers multiple ways to capture and send voice data to its own analysis platform. For example, survey researchers might want to work with the Phoebe plugin product. This is a component that can be used to voice enable any web-based questionnaire so that respondents' spoken responses are transcribed and their audio recordings are made available on the Phoebe platform for further analysis. The Phoebe Live product, however, enables spoken responses to be transcribed and analysed in real time so that interviewers can observe and measure and react dynamically to a subject's tone of voice. And lastly, the self-service option allows users to upload their own voice recordings, whether they be audio or video, from in-depth interviews, focus groups, call center recordings, or harvested social media such as TikTok or YouTube. Survey researchers working with Phoebe plugin find that when they're dealing with respondents who are completing questionnaires using mobile devices such as mobile phones, that when given the opportunity to voice their response, about 50% choose to do so. And this is useful to the researchers because the spoken responses tend to be longer and richer, and of course they're packed with revealing emotion data which is encoded in the audio itself. Here's a brief example of the Phoebe plugin product working in action. When working with Phoebe plugin, researchers often find that they don't want to voice enable all of the questions in the questionnaire, and they tend to focus on things like open-ended questions instead. They also have control over whether or not the question itself is read out, whether or not it automatically jumps to the next question, and whether or not respondents have the opportunity to re-record their answers.
What did you like most about the voice research?
I thought it was a really interesting conference with lots of opportunities for networking.
What did you like least about the voice research?
The venue could have been better. It was difficult to find and it took a long time to gain access.
What would be the most valuable experience we could facilitate at the voice research next time? Please list as many ideas as you'd like.
I'd like to have more time to talk to some of the speakers, as well as the opportunity to play with some of the software tools.
Is there anything else you would like to share with us?
Not at this time. Having looked at one of the methods by which Phoebe actually captures its voice data, we can now turn our attention to the platform where the analysis takes place. This is called Phoebe Portal. Phoebe Portal aims to go beyond looking at what people say to rather understand how they are saying it. And in doing so, it continuously analyzes 24 characteristics of tone of voice in order to detect and score non-conscious emotions. And the result is that Phoebe is creating new data that hopefully reveal deeper insights than conventional analysis. In fact, much of the research that underpins this has a long history, going back as far as the 19th century. Historically, much of this research has been focused on the attempt to try and categorize people's emotional states based upon their tone of voice into different groups of emotions. In Phoebe's case, the emotion detection engine is driven by machine learning, which extracts certain features from the audio signal and then attempts to classify it or categorize it into 5 different emotional states. Based on Murray and Arnold's research into human vocal emotion, the Phoebe emotion detection engine extracts a number of features such as the speech rate, which captures how quickly the speaker is speaking and whether or not that's changing over time, the pitch range, the pitch average, and changes in pitch, whether or not it's smoothly upward or abruptly downward. The voice quality in terms of its breathiness, or how resonant it is. Articulation in terms of whether it's precise or normal or slurring. And it uses these features to categorize on 3-second bursts each snippet of voice audio into 5 different categories: strong, reflecting passionate or emphatic tone of voice; happy, reflecting upbeat tone of voice; sad, perhaps reflecting downbeat, wistful or reflective tone of voice; anxious, reflecting nervous or hesitant or concerned tone of voice; and calm, reflecting even or undisturbed voice tones. For our first example of working with Phoebe Portal, we're going to look at some voice data that was captured using Phoebe plugin. This was a survey a family of friends at Analytical Factory carried out some time ago. The idea was to showcase how easy and powerful Phoebe is as a platform for collecting and analysing voice data. And in the survey we asked 3 simple questions. What was your absolute favourite memory of food or confectionery when you were growing up, and why was that special? What was the worst thing you've ever eaten or cooked, and how did that happen? And if you walked into the restaurant of your dreams, what would you order and why? Among the things we were interested in included responses where the content or sentiment contradicted the actual emotional cadence or tone of voice. We were also interested in topics that would elicit very passionate responses, and how childhood memories of feelings of disgust or delight would manifest themselves as emotional categories. When we log into the Phoebe Portal platform, we can see various projects that have already completed, showing a preview of some of the transcribed responses from various respondents. We can add to these existing projects by clicking the plus sign, selecting a project and adding additional files, or we can create a brand new one. Note that when we upload the files, these can be audio files, they can be video files, and they may be in a range of different languages. You can see that there's a very wide range of languages here that Phoebe Portal supports, and will also support translation to English as well as transcription in the native language itself. If we scroll down to the Food Heaven versus Food Hell survey that we were just talking about and click on that, we can open it and see some of the transcribed responses already previewed here in the project data window. One of the first examples we're going to look at here is this very short audio snippet where somebody is answering the question, what was the worst thing you've ever eaten? And they've given quite a negative sentiment answer, in the sense that they've said, oysters, I just hate the sensation of that thing going down my throat. And what's interesting, of course, is this contradicts the tone of voice that Phoebe has detected. Phoebe is saying that this person has quite an upbeat tone of voice, and there's some passion here as well. They've been quite emphatic or declamatory at certain points in the audio. If we want to isolate and find out where that's actually happening, given that there's 8 seconds of audio here and Phoebe applies its emotion detection every 3 seconds or thereabouts, we can actually highlight what parts of the audio or certain sections of the audio and see the emotion category that's associated with that. So we can see that oysters as quite a strong or passionate response. So that means they've been quite emphatic there. They've been quite declamatory. Whereas here, they're being, even though they're saying I hate the sensation of that thing going down my throat, they're actually quite upbeat and quite happy. And we can hear why that is the case when we play the recording back. Let's just do that.
Oysters. I just hate the sensation of that thing going down my throat.
In fact, we can see that in real time if we click the emotion trace player here.
Oysters. I just hate the sensation of that thing going down my throat.
So it's pretty clear here why it's applied the strong emotion to that particular response there, because she doesn't just say oysters, she says oysters. And it's also pretty clear why it's detected as being quite upbeat, because the respondent's actually quite happy. She in fact starts to laugh a bit when she completes the audio and says that thing going down my throat. If you compare and contrast that with the same respondent here, I'm just going to isolate some of the responses for demonstration purposes. I can add in what's called a filter control here to do that. Here's the same person, but this time they've given a longer answer, and a lot of it is associated with the sad category. The sad category doesn't necessarily mean that they were depressed. It can mean that they were quite reflective, sometimes nostalgic or wistful or considerate. And it just means that the actual tone of voice is somewhat more downbeat than upbeat. And if we listen again, we can see why that is the case, and we can hear why that's the case.
Warm hot chocolate on rainy days, because always when it was raining a lot in my childhood, my mom would make warm cakes for us, and I love it, and I try to make it for my kids too nowadays when it's raining.
So you can hear her tone of voice just dropping here near the end. It's not that she's depressed, it's not that she's unhappy, it's more that she's, she's wistful. Most of this would have been recorded during the pandemic. Let's listen to it.
For us, and I love it, and I try to make it for my kids too nowadays when it's raining.
So it's a reflective, wistful tone of voice. Having looked at how transcribed responses are manifested in Phoebe Portal, how they can be viewed and edited, and how we can compare the responses in terms of their voice emotion profile, we can turn our attention to isolating the contexts in which responses are given and the way in which emotional cadence may vary according to the topics that people are speaking about. In this project, for example, we have 24 football managers who are giving post-match interviews. However, there are two starkly different contexts in which the interviews are being given. 12 of them managed teams that have just won the match, whereas the other 12 have lost. Here's a snippet of two interviews, one from a manager who has won and one from one who has lost. Can you tell which is which?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about how to manage those moments. It's always easier to work on them and look at them than it is to actually execute. And when you play here, the fans get really excited about some of those moments. So, but they're good at that.
Is us. I think we have to be, like I say, I've always said it, we have to be true to ourselves. If we're going to be successful or unsuccessful or whatever that looks like this season, we've got to do it playing in a way that suits our players, and we have to be brave on the ball, we have to back ourselves to pass it in tight areas, we have to try and bring...
Using Phoebe's tagging system, we can create reports that compare topics or groups in terms of the emotion profiles. And we can see that when the managers are asked to evaluate their team's performance, although we might have expected those who won to be much happier than those who lost, in fact, those who won are simply much more passionate than those who lost. Almost as if their adrenaline is still running high. And this extremely nuanced insight is one of the things that makes Phoebe's analytical capabilities and tone of voice so compelling. We can also create subject matter tags in Phoebe from audio snippets where individual respondents use certain words or phrases. In fact, Phoebe's discovery function applies a natural language processing algorithm to extract nouns, adjectives, and other grammatical elements from the transcribed responses. In this example, the respondents are talking about topics such as pharmaceutical companies, the cost of medicines, illnesses, and treatments. When some of these topics are tagged, they're associated with quite passionate and anxious voice tones, and these are reflected in the charts that we can create. Here we have a chart of a tag group called business, which is associated with topics related to profit, affordability, price, insurance, and expense. And we can see a lot of passion and anxiety scores when these subjects are mentioned. In a similar sense, if we look at topics related to things like drugs, such as generics, addiction, insulin, and opioid use, again we're seeing some very negative emotional tones of voices that are getting referenced here. Moreover, we can actually download the data behind these charts and create our own visualizations and other tools. Lastly, it's worth noting that Phoebe also supports video playback and allows the user to control whether or not things like subtitles or emotion bars are included in the visualization. The videos themselves can be combined and edited in the video creator. where individual tags can be searched for to find the relevant sections of videos. Before they themselves are combined together and rendered for download.